In this message, I'd like to talk with you about the characteristics of creative people. Our studies show that certain characteristics are almost always present in the creative individual. And what are these characteristics? Well, here's a list of 25 of them. Now, no one man or woman has all of the traits I'll discuss, but the really creative people, the Socrates, Da Vinci's, Shakespeare's, Edison, Einstein, Schweitzer's, and all the others who've led us to where we are today, have had most of the following characteristics. So check yourself. Number 1, drive, the desire to work hard and long. 2, courage, tenacity of purpose, the mental and moral strength to venture and persevere. 3, goals, knowing what they wanted and going after it. 4, knowledge, a thirst for knowledge. They knew their fields. They constantly boned up on them. 5, good health. They kept physically and mentally fit. They exercised their bodies and, of course, their minds. 6, honesty. They were frank, forthright, honorable. They had integrity, and they were, above all, intellectually honest. 7, optimism. The great creative people were usually optimistic and positive. They believed in people, and they were cheerfully reasonable, trying hard to be part of the solution to a problem, not part of the problem. 8, and judgment. They exercised judgment. They searched for facts, evaluated them, tried always to understand first, then judge. 9, enthusiasm. They were enthusiastic. They were vital. They had a zest for life. They lived life fully. 10, they were chance takers. They didn't fear failure. They knew failure is often a stepping stone to success. 11, they were dynamic. They were energetic, always on the move. 12, enterprising. They courageously took on jobs others didn't want or couldn't do. They were never afraid to try the unknown. They were opportunity seekers. 13, they were persuasive. They knew how to sell. They knew what motivates people. They inspired action and backed it up with reason and sound arguments. 14, they were outgoing. They made friends easily, and they were easy on their friends. They encouraged people and ideas to grow in their presence. 15, they were good communicators. They had verbal skill and competence. They spoke fluently and interestingly. 16, they were perceptive. Their gateways to the mind were always wide open. Their senses were highly tuned to life around them. They were quick, acute, and sensitive. Their mental radar was always on. 17, they were both patient and impatient. Patient with others, most of the time, but always impatient with themselves, believing they could and should be doing more and doing it better. 18, and adaptable. They were resilient, not rigid in their thinking. They were intelligently flexible, adjusting quickly to changing situations. 19, they were perfectionists, always striving for the highest possible degree of excellence. They would not settle for mediocrity, particularly in themselves. They tried to be tolerant with others, but others knew they insisted upon excellence. 20, they had a sense of humor. They saw the lighter side of life. They laughed easily, enjoyed a good story, often at their own expense. 21, they were versatile. They were able to do many things and do them well. 22, they were curious, inquisitive, always asking why. They knew that questions are the creative acts of the intelligence. 23, individualistic. They were purposefully independent. They did things the way they believed they should be done. 24, they were both realists and idealists, occupied by reality and guided by ideals. 25, and of course they were imaginative. They knew how to imagineer. They knew how to think in new combinations. They were able to conceive new relationships because of their curiosity and their habit of thinking outside the boundaries of conformity. They thought imaginatively, they judged wisely, and they got their best ideas into action. Well, those are 25 of the characteristics found in the most creative people. Again, let me stress that few creative people have all of these traits. Yet every creative person seems to have many of them in varying degrees. Each of these characteristics, one at a time, can be fashioned into a solid habit, and together they can become a living philosophy, a creative way of life. You already have many of these traits. My objective here is to encourage you to bring them out, spotlight them, polish them, hone them, and use them in your daily life. And here's how you can start making these creative characteristics a part of your life right now. Your record album contains 25 cards, each listing one of these traits. Spread the cards in front of you, study each one, and think negatively. That's right, think negatively. Take the card which lists your weakest creative characteristic and put it aside. Take another card listing your next weakest trait, and so on, until you've built a stack of 25 cards, weakest traits on top, strongest on the bottom. Start today and work on weak trait number 1. Work on it diligently for 1 week. Make it a part of your life. Next week, start on weak trait number 2. Keep going. Work on all 25 characteristics one at a time. Soon, all 25 will be a living part of you. You'll have studied, worked on, and put into action 25 different creative characteristics. If you do this faithfully, you'll be a far more creative person. You'll be more interesting, more valuable, and perhaps more uncomfortable. That is, you'll start to realize the scope, the depth and breadth of your creative power. You'll see new horizons, new ways to solve problems, new ways to create, build, invent, and improve. Even more important, you'll begin to work and live closer to the highest level of your mind power, to realize fulfillment of your own potential. Thank you. Not long ago, I heard someone say, if only each of us had one of those new high-speed computers hooked up in his head, he'd be much better off. Well, whoever made that statement either knew very little about computers or didn't realize what kind of potential he already has between his ears. We're really much better off just the way we are right now. The human brain is probably the only thing in existence that can't be improved upon, except perhaps by the slow passage of centuries. The computer has been called a high-speed moron. That is to say that although the modern computer is among the most sophisticated electronic systems yet devised, it's still severely limited in its abilities, and it falls far short of the human brain. We have enormous mental powers and the intelligence to explore and utilize them. The computer can only carry out orders which are fed into it. It can only perform mathematical calculations and make mechanical comparisons. It can't make value judgments. True, computers whiz through reams of problems almost instantaneously, saving us days, even months of laborious figuring. Yet the computer is only as good as the person who's programming it. Experts tell us that the brain can capture, store, recall, and program more than 600 bits of information per second. In the course of a lifetime, this is an enormous total, billions and billions of facts and impressions. On the other hand, our latest computers can handle only a few million characters in their memory banks. A comparison between us and those electronic marvels finally boils down to this. We can think, the machines cannot, and that's a really significant difference. Now let's take a careful look at the brain. It has 4 basic powers. 1, the power to absorb, the ability to take in information, knowledge. We do this by looking, listening, touching, tasting, and smelling, by using all 5 of our senses and keeping the gateways of our mind always open. Number 2, the power of retention, the capacity to retain knowledge and recall it. Our brains are like endless rows of filing cabinets with relatively few packed file drawers full of all sorts of information. There's always much room for more. 3, the power of judgment, of logical thought. The more facts we feed our brain, the more able it is to reason and judge intelligently. And 4, the power of imagination, the ability to think creatively. With the first 2 powers, absorption and retention, we gather the raw material with which to think. And with the other 2, judgment and imagination, we evaluate old ideas and create new ones. Put another way, we have 4 switches in our minds. Turn on switch number 1 and we gather information. Switch number 2 snaps on our retentive powers. We retain and recall the facts that come in through the first switch. Number 3 clicks on our judgment. When it's on all the way, we think logically. And number 4 is the switch for imagination. With most people, this is the one that collects the most rust. When we were children, we used the imagination switch all the time, fighting imaginary bandits and flying make-believe airplanes. This is pure imagination. But as we grow older, we're seldom encouraged to use the imaginative power we spent our childhood cultivating. Instead, we're taught to conform, to take no chances, to play it safe, to follow the crowd. So switch number 4 soon gets rusty, and we find it difficult to turn it back on when we get older. Another thing, as we grew up, people had a way of making us feel uncomfortable when they saw us using imagination. When we came up with new ideas, they were often greeted with sneers or sarcastic laughter or comments such as, "That's a crazy idea. It won't work. It's never been done before," or "We always do it this way," and so on. These are idea killers. I'm sure you've heard them and many more. They stifle creativity. Sometimes, too often really, we use them on others. But even worse, we use them on ourselves. We actually kill our own ideas before they're given a chance to prove themselves, one way or the other. Now, in order to combat this type of negative behavior, here are a few thoughts you might like to remember. 1. Ideas can come from anyone, anywhere, at any time. Ideas, like babies, don't pick their parents, so be a sponge for ideas. 2. Ideas, particularly in their early stages of development, demand care and attention. They can be crushed all too easily. And 3, ideas need encouragement, or rather, people need to be encouraged to think up ideas and communicate them to us. Try never to be guilty of uttering those idea killers. You can never tell when or where you'll find a good idea. So make it a point to create a receptive atmosphere around you. Let other people know you're interested in them and in what they have on their minds. Treat your ideas and the ideas of others with extreme care. Let people and their ideas grow in your presence. When you do, you're using your 4 brain powers the way they were meant to be used. You're thinking creatively. Use your wonderful mind to its fullest. It won't wear out. Our brains thrive on exercise. It might not be a bad idea to try out all 4 of your creative switches today. I mean the absorption, retention, judgment, and imagination powers we've been talking about. This evening, for example, you might pick a subject that's important to you, read about it, or talk with someone who's well informed about it. Absorb all you can. Recall from your memory all the information it contains on this subject. Get these facts down on paper. Next, judge which of these facts are most useful to you. Then, imagine. Think of new ways to apply these in your daily life. Absorb, recall, judge, and imagine. When you consciously use this formula for a while, it quickly becomes a habit, and as a habit you'll be pleased to have. Thank you.